Welcome back then folks to day 4 of Special Projects pack number 10 already, and this one of course is a returning legend, not necessarily the quickest of rally cars in Gran Turismo's past, but definitely no slouch either. The Mitsubishi Evo 6 rally car, as they used to call it, rather than the WRC officially. This particular livery is one of a ton of liveries, much like the Golf GT40 that players have done. This one I like because it blends quite nicely the real-life counterpart, because of course there were a couple of different variations on the livery, with of course the one that was featured in Gran Turismo 6. And we are using Gran Turismo 6 as a reference in terms of spec. Now for this one, as you'll have seen in the teaser trailer for this pack, I'm using it on a snow course. So of course I do have those tyres on it rather than dirt ones, so you'll need to change that if you want to. Now, as far as the parts, it's not necessarily going to be a perfect mirror of real-life WRC regulations at the time, because we're pretty much just fitting what we can without being too ridiculously overboard to get the kind of specs that Gran Turismo 6 did have. So if you bear that in mind, I know that some purists don't like certain aspects of my builds. You know, there's only so much I have to work with in terms of certain cars getting the power they need or whatever else. So that's just the way it is, unfortunately. As far as the sports section, first of all, we've got the filter, the silencer, the stage 1 weight. Of course, it has the sports hard tyres anyway. As far as the club sports section, I've got the power restrictor and the ballast. For the semi-racing stuff, the sports, or I guess I should say the fully customised ECU for this one. We've got the fully customised diff. I've opted for the fully customised manual transmission. I have not touched the body rigidity. You don't need stage 3 weight there either. As far as the anti-lag, that is fitted, and I do have it turned on, but we'll get to that in a minute, of course. We've got racing drilled discs. I've said before, it doesn't really matter if you go for slotted, drilled, or ceramics. Ceramics might be a bit overkill visually for a WRC car, but I'll leave it down to you. We've got the racing pads, race suspension, unsurprisingly, the clutch and flywheel, of course, the torque vector and centre diff, and then as far as the extreme stuff, I've gone for the hydraulic handbrake, which always comes in handy on the dirt, the steering angle adapter, of course, for the manoeuvrability, and as I said earlier on, the snow tyres. Then for the ultimate section, I've got nothing at all fitted there. I guess you could go for the carbon prop shaft if you wanted to, but it doesn't really feel appropriate to the rally car. So as far as the tuning goes, because like I said, we are working to roughly Gran Turismo 6 specs, which is about 290 horsepower, 1230 kilos, and as it turns out, it's only just over 500 points, which I guess kind of makes sense because the specs aren't that different to a normal Evo anyway, in rally car form. So, as far as the tyres, of course, the snow ones are fitted. Your point level will change, incidentally, if you have dirt tyres instead of snow, of course. So as far as the suspension, I've got it a little bit higher on the front, which, as you can see here in the menu, it doesn't look like that, really, because naturally the Evo is lower at the front anyway, so I wanted to bring that up a little bit for the ground clearance. So 145 and 140, 4 for the anti-roll, 30 and 40 for dampers, 2.45 for springs, no camber on the rear, just a little bit of camber on the front, 0.5. As far as the toe, I've actually towed in on the front by 0.15 to improve the turn in, and on the back, much like I do with my front-wheel drive rally cars, I've towed it out to increase the tail happiness. And in terms of manoeuvrability, well, if you give it a try, you'll see what it's like. It's pretty damn good through tight corners, as you'd hope an Evo would be. As far as the diff, some don't necessarily like my diff settings, but give it a try, and if you don't like it, you can always change it. I've gone triple 10 on the front, as my cursor goes crazy, triple 30 on the back. As far as the centre split, as many of you know, I quite like a 50-50. It's more predictable to work with, and I like to work around that from that point onward. So, again, you could change that if you wanted to. As far as the transmission, fairly close ratio, 230 kilometers an hour. It's not super close, but I find that one's just about good enough because on a track such as the snow course, you do actually need a bit better top speed than you might think because of that long home straight section. So this will get you up over 150 miles an hour, which is good enough for most rally tracks, but it will top out up around the 150, just under 160 region. So what you might want to do, if you want to keep the close ratios, is just, of course, go into the manual section and then stretch out fifth, just a little bit more if you find it to be an issue. Or, of course, you could set this up to 240 or 250 instead, but then, of course, that affects all of the gears rather than just fifth. Like I said, I'll leave it down to you. As far as the ballast, you want 6 kilos, so not that much, just to bring us up to that Gran Turismo 6 weight. I've plopped it all the way to the front, which is probably the opposite to what you'd be expecting, just because having less weight over the rear makes it more chuckable through corners. 84% restriction on the ECU to bring us up to the right horsepower, or I guess I should say down to the right horsepower. And of course you could say, well, why not just not fit the other stuff? Well, part of it is because I wanted it to sound more like a rally car as well, have some of those audio upgrades. But again, you could pick and choose what you do or don't want to fit, I guess. As far as the downforce, I've set that as low as it can go. Personal preference, I guess, there. You don't necessarily have to do what I've done, but give it a try. Anti-lag, I know different people like different things, especially when it comes to economy. I've got it set on strong because it's more of a sprint build, and of course it does make a difference to the acceleration. And then for this stuff, as always, you can see everything we've fitted. Not exactly too much to do either. There are tons of different liveries that players have done, like I said. You don't even have to go for necessarily the red and white version if you didn't want to, but that's what I've done, so of course show that player some love if you do decide to get it, and naturally we have to take it out to a snow course to show you what it's like in practice. Now for those who are completely new to this special project series that I'm doing, first of all, welcome. There are tons of other cars to do that I've already done, like over 90 of them in the previous packs, as well as all the individual cars here and there. But when it comes to rally builds, I usually recommend, even me as someone who prefers an automatic gearbox, to use a manual, because with rallying it's too sluggish. The automatic bogs you down way too much, especially if you've got a rally car that doesn't have quite as much power. For example, down like the 100-200 horsepower region, you really need to be working that gearbox to get the best out of it, because it just doesn't change at the right times. So for this one, yet again, I would strongly recommend using the manual gearbox. It's a fantastic little car to work with, and if you are an Evo fan, and if this is one that you were looking forward to, I think you're going to like it. Of course, you could take the approach that we used to do, back when this was in like Gran Turismo 6 most recently, and tune the heck out of it, up to like 500 horsepower I guess, but this is just a representation of the standard version, using the word standard very loosely when it comes to a rally car, that we had in that game. So, as I always like to say, if you do decide to give it a try, I hope you have a lot of fun with it, and of course, check out the other special projects that are still to come. We're already well over halfway through the week, so not too many left to do, and if you are jumping into it at this point, definitely check out the ones which I've already done in the past couple of days as well. But that's it for this build. I'll see you next time, and for now, thanks for watching.